Welcome to another episode of the Bandage Podcast, a weekly wrap-up of the most trending healthcare news. Each week, join me and my co-host Alex Ross as we'll discuss the latest in healthcare, health IT, and compliance.
In this week's episode, we discuss a salmonella risk was Salsa, a smart toothbrush, and an alternative treatment for irregular heartbeat. Let's wrap things up. This is episode 46 for the week of August 17th. I'm Matt Moneypenny.
And I'm Alex Ross.
Before we get started, our diagnosis code of the week is XO3, exposure to controlled fire, not in building or structure.
Right. Interestingly enough, this has happened to me, but it was kind of a contentious subject between the diagnostician, if you will, and the other doctors, because I argue that my 12-foot bonfire was perfectly controlled.
Oh, of course.
But the doctor thinks that's a little, quote, excessive. I don't know. All I know is I did get a little bit singed, just a little bit. It really wasn't anything. Just lost a little bit of skin. So, no big deal. I'm totally fine. Don't worry.
Perfect.
I put a little aloe on it. I only went to the doctor because my mom said I should. So,
what kind of wood were you using?
Just, general scrap stuff that I had laying around.
Oh, of course. That's the problem. That's why it burnt you. You weren't using a nice cedar wood. I only burn my fires with the finest of woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. That way it's controlled,
That's how you control it with your well, I control it by being the one who built it. I was in control, okay?
Right.
Don't let this doctor tell you any other way. Totally controlled, okay?
And with that, let's get right into the news. First up, we have these onions could do more than make you cry. Spokane Produce Incorporated is voluntarily recalling salsa products containing onions. This is the result of an expanded recall by Spokane's onion supplier, Thompson International Incorporated. The recalls are due to concerns of the potential contamination by Salmonella. The products were distributed in Indiana, Montana, Oregon, and Washington states between May 13th and August 10th. They reached consumers only through retail stores. Consumers who purchase any of the affected products should discard it and return it to the place of purchase. No illnesses have been reported. Consumers who have any questions can call Spokane Produce.
Got to be careful when you're eating your salsa, huh?
Yeah, see, well,
Usually, though, when I think of a salsa, right, it comes in a glass jar that's sealed.
Right.
And so that tells me that it was pressure cooked to make that seal, right, to can it.
Right.
So we must be talking about more of those fresh salsas that just kind of come in a little plastic container.
Yes.
Right.
Probably.
So I guess
in the refrigerator
learned.
aisle. They're not in the regular aisle. They're in the refrigerator aisle. They're the fancy salsas, I'm going to charge you $2 extra for this salsa just because it needs to be refrigerated.
Exactly. Well, I guess lesson learned, if you want salsa, just make your own.
Right. Exactly.
If you're getting a fresh salsa like that, one that's not canned or processed, it's just a couple tomatoes, some peppers, some onions, chop them up, throw them together, salsa.
Some garlic salt, some pepper, some salt itself, some of that hot sauce stuff. Maybe a couple ghost peppers in there, like you said, and some Tostito chips, and you're good. I'm more of a guacamole guy. I don't know. I feel like the salsa versus guacamole debate is very heated, but I will stand true to guacamole through and through.
Do they make products that they call salsa mole, where it's half and half mixed together?
I don't know. What are you, like a Heinz genius?
Good.
You know how Heinz is like... It's like cranch. It's like ketchup and ranch. It's like, oh my gosh. Calm down. That sounds disgusting.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
And it's super aggressive. Cranch.
I'm really not a big fan of guacamole just by itself. I just don't tend to like the flavor. It's just weird to me, but I like the texture. It's kind of like sour cream.
Not everyone has a well-defined palate yet. Some of us still like stuff off the children's menu. It's fine.
So I'm thinking salsa mole. That's going to be the next big thing. Next up, hey Alexa, are my teeth clean? A new Procter & Gamble toothbrush has the functions of an Amazon Alexa to keep you entertained and help boost oral health. Its Wi-Fi enabled charger can play music or the news, update you on the weather, control your smart home devices, and order off Amazon. This tech toothbrush helps maintain oral health with a light monitoring system for brushing efficiently. It flashes red if you're brushing too hard and green when you've brushed for 2 minutes. You can also sync the toothbrush to the Oral-B app, where you can receive personalized tips for improvement. Oral-B Guide coaches you while you brush and provides real-time feedback on brushing frequency, duration, coverage, and optimal pressure. There is no part of me who's ever had the thought, gosh, I wish I had a toothbrushing coach.
Man, while I'm brushing my teeth, I really wish I could hear the latest story on the sports right now. Like,
Right, because I need my toothbrush to do that.
I get it. The most functional part of this is the 2 minutes thing and the red light thing, the haptic feedback telling you that you're brushing too hard. But I am not, for the life of me, going to download the Oral-B app and make a user account so that they can tell me how to improve my brushing on the app. Like, that is just not something I'm going to open. I'm sorry. I'm not.
That just seems like something that they're trying to get, a new revenue stream by collecting user data to sell.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what
the only reason I
everything's
can think of.
everything's about user data. It's gonna pretty soon that thing's gonna scan your teeth, and they're gonna be able to tell to like sell that to marketing companies who can sell.
It probably already is
based to you. Yeah,
it's already scanning your teeth, and you're gonna get ads for like Invisalign braces and stuff like that.
And it goes to your Wi-Fi, so so your Wi-Fi is already struggling because of all those smart devices that are connected to it, right? It's already going to get slowed down because everything that uses Wi-Fi, whether or not you're using it or not, still needs that connection and still uses some of your Wi-Fi, even if you're not connected. So now you're going to have this toothbrush who's going to like bog down your internet. It's just like, what?
And the benefit
there needs to be a line here
that it blinks green.
There needs to be a line. Like, smart devices are great, but they're getting out of control. Like, it's almost like when apps first came around, there was an app for everything. And even like half the time apps, like for the smaller companies and stuff, you download the app and it would just open up the web page on your phone instead of just, going to Google and typing it in on your phone. It would just open up the web page. Like, this is kind of like what the new reality is with smart devices. It's just getting in together with like a bunch of managers and being like, hey, how can we make a smart device?
Yeah. How can we get in on this game?
Like,
with our toothbrushes.
Instead of just making the toothbrush better at cleaning your teeth, like, no.
Right. We've made the toothbrush good enough. Now we need to make you better at brushing your teeth.
Plus, imagine you're brushing your teeth and you're trying to talk to your toothbrush to tell you to watch the news. It's like,
that's what I was.
Wait, could you tell me what's the weather right now? Like,
or better yet, it allows you to order off Amazon. I can see that going very well.
Like, can you order? Like, how with smart devices right now, you have to like say, "Hey Google" or "Hey Alexa" like 4 times so that it can realize how you say it.
Make all of them go off
in different ways. Like, for Oral-B's, the instructions are like, place the toothbrush in your mouth and pretend that you're brushing your teeth, and then say Oral-B 4 times. Oh my gosh. Anyways, next up we have, you can forget taking your medicine with this one-time implant. PIH Good Samaritan Hospital is one of the first Los Angeles hospitals to offer a new implant device to patients with non-valvular atrial fibrillation. The Watchman FLX, left atrial appendage closure, or LAAC, is an alternative to long-term warfarin medication. Up to 6 million Americans are affected by AF, which is an irregular heartbeat. People with AF have 5 times greater risk of stroke than others. The Watchman FLX closes off an area of the heart to keep harmful blood clots from entering the bloodstream and potentially causing a stroke. By closing off the left atrial appendage, the risk of stroke may be reduced over time, and patients may be able to stop taking blood thinners. The technology's design helps treat more patients safely and effectively to ensure long-term outcomes.
I'm just Sorry, I'm in another world thinking AF. They got some heart stuff AF.
Yo, this implant is dope AF.
Mm-hmm. So
For all those hip kids out there.
This kind of goes off of our previous story where we're talking about just adding on smart devices. Now we got smart hearts. Where are we going to stop?
Yeah. I mean, so this, I understand
That's
this.
a joke.
Cool.
This isn't a connected device.
I know. I think I understand that this implant is cool, but I also think it's kind of scary at the same time. I feel like a lot of people are going to have a hard time being like, okay, implant this device into my heart. Because that's, I mean.
I would. I mean, if it is going to potentially get me off of blood thinners or prevent a stroke like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the benefits of it might outweigh the initial scare of it, but I also feel like most of the time the people that are like at risk for stroke are usually people who are older, and I think that even if you have an irregular heartbeat, you're probably not going to have a stroke unless you're older, and usually those people who are the older patients are a little bit apprehensive about going to the doctor alone, like going to the doctor at all, let alone getting something implanted into their heart. I don't know. It just seems kind of worrisome, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and obviously all of those procedures are always going to be dangerous, right? There has to be a pretty significant risk for it to be worth it.
Yep.
To take that risk in general. So,
but another helpful thing coming down, because I feel like, I don't know, is irregular heartbeat really hard to diagnose? Because my grandma, when she was in the hospital one time, they were like, she has an irregular heartbeat, and we didn't know that until like she was 84. You know what I mean? So it must be kind of hard to find. I don't know.
Right, because you don't necessarily notice it unless it becomes an issue, or they're looking for something else.
Right.
So you can have an irregular heartbeat for years and years and years, and it never really affects your day-to-day life. And so for that reason, like, nobody ever knows.
Interesting stuff.
Absolutely.
And with that, let's get on to our next segment.
BREACH, Breach Patrol. It's a breach! All of the latest cybersecurity breaches.
Welcome to Breach Patrol, where we talk about the latest and greatest and most threatening cybersecurity breaches all across the world. First up, we have...
Finally, some action after our investigation. Illinois healthcare system FHN recently announced that patients were notified of a data breach which occurred in February. An investigation was launched after noticing that employee email accounts had been compromised. FHN responded by securing those accounts and hiring a forensic firm to determine what happened. There was sensitive data within the accounts that could have been accessible, but the investigation was unable to determine if the unauthorized person actually viewed any of the data. Not all patients were affected. FHN is offering complimentary credit monitoring service and identity protection services to those whose social security numbers or driver's license numbers were exposed. The company is reinforcing education with staff on how to identify and avoid suspicious emails, and it's making email security enhancements such as multi-factor authentication. I do think it was most likely just someone clicking something they shouldn't have.
Yep. And that's how a lot of breaches end up happening, is you're not paying attention and someone sends you a phishing email and you accidentally click it because you think it's like one of your coworkers sending you something that's important, and it turns out to be something that downloads a malicious executable file, and then before you know it, you put your entire company at risk.
Right.
It's like it's such a simple thing, but it can have such a huge impact on your organization, and that's what kind of makes it so scary. And it's
as companies think about their security, a lot of times they're like, okay, all these systems, and but they neglect the one that is arguably the most vulnerable, their own staff.
Yep, your staff is the number one risk for breaches. And it's one thing to say, oh, you got to be vigilant when you're looking at your emails, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we always, I mean, checking your emails is like a brainless thing that we just do by habit. You've been working for a while, especially on a computer, and it's just like, it's hard to tell people to be vigilant and actually like practice that, because it's just such a mindless task. So Yeah, it just comes down to training, but it also comes down to the person as well. Like they just need to realize what's at stake if they mess up.
Exactly. Good rule of thumb, if the person in your organization was alive before email was invented, you should probably give them a little extra training on how to
Yes.
stay safe using email.
100% yes. Yes. And that's not like being ageist, that's just how it is. So, I mean,
Right.
being a millennial, I mean, we grew up with like really bad pop-up ads and stuff like that. So even now, like looking at advertisements on websites that are completely fine, I'm still kind of apprehensive because I grew up knowing if you click on an ad, it's usually a scam. So,
Right.
but
And frankly, you merely adopted the email. I was born in it, molded by it.
yes, we have the bane of emails on this podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
The bane of emails is suspicious links, so don't click.
Next up, we have, if one picture is worth 1,000 words, how much is 10 terabytes worth? Canon has reportedly suffered a ransomware attack on several of its web domains. Hackers are claiming to have stolen users' personal data. An investigation by Bleeping Computer identified the list of domains that were affected. Bleeping Computer claimed to have received internal memos from a source at Canon with details of the breach. Bleeping Computer also claims to have obtained a partial screenshot of the Canon ransomware note. As it stands, the hackers demand payment as the only method to restore the files and be safe from any data leakage. The hackers claim to have stolen 10 terabytes worth of data, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
Just to put into perspective, most computers have anywhere between 1 terabyte to 3 terabytes of storage available on their hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, unless you're like a videographer, a photographer, or content marketing person or anything like that, you're not going to fill that space up, most likely, over the course of 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 terabytes of that is a lot of photos and videos. And
it can be, yeah.
Yeah. Unless it's all 4K, 8K, you know?
Yeah, you film in 4K, 10 terabytes, that's like a minute and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really, but this is one of those breaches where if it's 10 terabytes of personal data, that's insane. That's a lot.
Yep.
But if it's 10 terabytes of photos, there might be some in there that were supposed to be private, but like in general, I don't know, steal 10 terabytes of photos of my dog. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know how bad per se this is for the individual who got affected. Because it could be like just, I mean, if you look in your phone, you end up over the course of like just your phone, right? If we were to look at your phone's photos and videos, right? That thing just stacks up over time. So it's like photos of yourself, photos on social media, photos of dinners and photos of food, Snapchat photos, screenshots, downloaded photos, downloaded videos. And is that stuff really that, like, I mean, if someone got into my phone and looked at my photos, I'd be like, okay, like, enjoy looking at my husky. Like,
right.
It's not that offensive. But I think on a different level, it affects Canon more so. It kind of just affects their reputation.
It does, yeah.
So, especially because, I mean, in general, photo companies are kind of going by the wayside. The only way that they kind of make money now is either through printing software, editing software, or like hobbyist photographers, like actual professionals and hobbyists, not like, because most people have cameras on their phones. So
right. There's not a whole lot of direct to consumer sales anymore. Well, yes and no. They are certainly declining kind of in that category, but they're also producing more affordable options that do things that your phone doesn't, that people seem to really like Sony's A7 series. Those cameras are like wildly popular because people just love the way the photos look off of them. And so I think there is room to kind of recapture that market, but it's not going to happen through getting breached.
Right.
Next up, don't steal answers, just steal data. ProctorU, a proctoring platform, obviously, for online exams, disclosed that it was the victim of a major breach. This site allows teachers to ensure students don't cheat when they take online exams. The database contained details of 444,000 people, including names, addresses, emails, phone numbers, hash passwords, and organization details. ProctorU disabled the server terminated access to the environment, and is investigating the incident. The company implemented additional security measures to prevent recurrence. It's in the process of notifying affected universities and organizations. Let me just say, it already hurt enough spending all of my money for the rest of my life to go to college. And as someone who was breached by my college, I feel so bad for these people.
Just in time for school to be back in session.
Right. Good job. You took your quiz. Have some data breach on the side.
Yeah, I think that the unfortunate reality of this is, I mean, we're going to see more of this kind of stuff happening because of where we're at with education right now.
Right.
In terms of hybrid classes, mostly online classes because of coronavirus. And I hate talking about coronavirus because it's kind of been beaten to death, but it's still a reality that we have to face. And I think more and more hackers are going to keep targeting anything that's related to schools because that's easy information, right? So, because a lot of it's state funded, government funded. Obviously, this one isn't, but I mean, you get the idea. So,
often legacy systems. And
as a whole, though, I mean, that's an interesting concept to try to figure out a way to offer something that makes sure that students don't cheat on their exams.
Right.
I don't know how that works. Like, how do you lock down that they don't go into a different tab and just Google for the answer?
Especially when people have multiple devices.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Part of me thinks maybe something more along the lines of preventing like plagiarism.
Right.
Like it up and copying nearly word for word from a website. It's able to kind of cross-reference students' answers with the internet and see if it's something they just copied. But even then, like, I don't know, I've been known to memorize things. So if you ask me, like, what is a mitochondria? And I respond, it's the powerhouse of the cell. Am I plagiarizing that off a website? Or is that just something that I specifically memorized?
So I have a good story. So, you know, like, I don't know, middle school, high school, you have a test. And a lot of times on that test are vocabulary words, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my teachers, she gave us homework where we had to do vocabulary words, where we essentially look up the words from the chapter, go into the back of the book at the glossary, and write down the word. And then on the back of the flashcard, you write down the definition of the word to help you study.
Mm-hmm.
Me, being the savvy young man that I was, I decided to just photocopy glossary and then use different color highlighters for the chapters and turn that in as my homework. Which, if you think about it, people study in different ways, and that's not that bad of an idea. I was scolded for it, but it's kind of being like, yo, how can I rework this and make it more efficient? And I think I found a pretty good way when I was 12 years old to be like, this is a pretty good way to do this. I'm not going to do the flashcards because I think that takes way too much time. So why don't I just look at the thing and quiz myself that way? So she didn't give me credit for that homework, but I thought it was a good idea.
I absolutely agree, but definitely not in the spirit of the assignment. We had to make like vocabulary note cards at one point, and all of them, we had to turn in two different things. We had to turn in note cards with each, like a flashcard of every vocabulary word, and we also had to turn in the master list of all of our definitions that we wrote. And they had to be in our own words, and they had to be a certain number of words long. So I spent way too many days printing out this list, cutting the strips of vocabulary words out, and gluing them to note cards. It was terrible. The lists were like 200 words long.
Oh my gosh.
I'll never forget that. But anyway, that's it for this week's wrap-up of your weekly healthcare news. I'm Alex Ross.
I'm Matt Moneypenny.
And we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Bandage. This week's episode was written and produced by eTactics. eTactics is a leading revenue cycle solutions organization committed to providing innovative, web-based solutions that improve our clients' cash management and customer relationships. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.